Hello, friends. Are you ready to explore the fascinating world of Psycho? Released on June 16, 1960, this film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're bringing you all the hidden gems, stunning details, and unforgettable moments. If you enjoy this deep dive, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps our channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more exciting movie explorations. Let's jump right in and uncover the magic together. At first glance, the story begins like a classic crime drama, with a woman on the run and a bag full of stolen money. Marion, played with quiet tension and tragic vulnerability by Leigh, has just done something impulsive, something wrong, and yet we can't help but follow her. As she drives away from Phoenix with $40,000 hidden in her bag, the desert highway becomes more than a backdrop. It becomes a symbol of escape, guilt, and fear. The black and white cinematography wraps her in shadow, each frame tightening like a noose. She's sweating, she's thinking, she's unraveling. And then, the storm. That rainy night leads her to the flickering sign of the Bates Motel, a lonely outpost just off the main highway. It's here the tone shifts, ever so subtly, into something more sinister. The motel's caretaker, Norman Bates, steps into view. Anthony Perkins brings him to life with a boyish smile that feels both gentle and eerily vacant. He stammers. He offers sandwiches. He talks about taxidermy, of all things. And then, almost too casually, he mentions his mother, his ill mother, living up in the old Gothic house on the hill. That house, perched high in silhouette like a haunted sentinel, becomes one of cinema's most enduring images. Their conversation in the parlor is more than small talk. It's a psychological game. As Norman speaks about his mother, calling her harmless but hinting at deeper wounds, we begin to sense something is off. The stuffed birds on the wall seem to watch, as if even they know something terrible is coming. Marion, meanwhile, begins to regret her choices. She decides to return the money. She takes a shower. And in that one scene, just 45 seconds long, Hitchcock changed cinema forever. The scream, the knife, the shrieking strings of Bernard Herrmann's brilliant score, the quick, disorienting cuts, blood spiraling down the drain, and then silence. No one had seen anything like it. The lead actress, the moral center of the story, killed halfway through. Hitchcock shattered every storytelling rule in the book. Audiences were stunned. Theaters were silent. It wasn't just a murder scene. It was a moment that made people realize that in this story, absolutely anything could happen. With Marion gone, our focus shifts. We're left with Norman. Timid, polite, disturbingly calm. As he cleans up the mess, he wraps her body in a shower curtain. He sinks her car in the swamp. And just like that, he becomes the center of the story. But who exactly is Norman Bates? That question drives the rest of the film. A private investigator arrives, curious about Marion and the missing money. He too meets a grim fate. Then comes Leigh Crane, Marion's sister, and Sam Loomis, Marion's lover, piecing together the mystery with growing dread. All roads lead back to that house on the hill. The final descent into the basement is pure terror. Leigh finds the truth, and it is grotesque. The shriveled corpse of Mrs. Bates, long dead, seated in a rocking chair, her mouth gaping in a silent scream. The real horror isn't supernatural. It's psychological. Norman, unable to cope with the loss of his mother, preserved her body and created a split personality to keep her alive within him. At times, he became her voice, mannerisms, and all. That reveal cemented Psycho as more than just a thriller. It was a deep, chilling study of the human mind, repression, guilt, and the horrors we hide from ourselves. Hitchcock's direction is filled with choices that manipulate and provoke. The camera often acts like a voyeur, peering through peepholes or lingering on quiet details. An eye twitch, a subtle smile, a motel key turned upside down. He orchestrates suspense not through shock alone, but through anticipation. You feel the dread long before the scream. Then there's Bernard Herrmann's score, minimalist, piercing, unforgettable. The screeching violins of the shower scene have become one of the most recognizable pieces of music in film history. Yet beyond that, The score breathes tension into every moment, a heartbeat echoing the character's fear and confusion. And let's not forget the controversy. Psycho broke taboos. It showed a toilet flushing, something unheard of at the time. It hinted at voyeurism, insanity, and sexual repression. Hitchcock famously insisted that theaters not allow anyone in after the film started, ensuring audiences would experience the full impact of the twists. The marketing campaign was secretive, the trailers cryptic. It was a masterclass in suspense both on and off the screen. The impact of Psycho was immediate and massive. Critics were divided at first, but the box office success was undeniable. Over time, it gained recognition as a landmark film, influencing generations of directors, from Brian De Palma and Martin Scorsese to David Fincher and Jordan Peele. It redefined horror, introduced psychological complexity to mainstream thrillers, and proved that fear could be internal as much as external. Anthony Perkins' performance remains iconic. His boy-next-door charm, mixed with unsettling vulnerability, made Norman Bates one of the most sympathetic yet terrifying villains ever portrayed. Janet Leigh's brief but powerful role earned her a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination. And the film's legacy lives on through countless homages, sequels, and adaptations, including the TV series Bates Motel, which gave a fresh take on Norman's origins. More than 6 decades later, Psycho still shocks. It still mesmerizes. It still gets under your skin. It's not just about a murder or a motel. It's about how the mind fractures, how love and madness blur, and how horror isn't always found in monsters, but in the people who seem the most ordinary. And that is the haunting genius of Alfred Hitchcock. He didn't just want to scare us. He wanted to make us question everything we thought we knew about storytelling, morality, and ourselves. Thanks for taking this deep dive into the world of Psycho. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more cinematic explorations just like this one. Until next time, stay curious and maybe double-lock your motel room door. There are films that entertain, and then there are films that change the language of cinema forever. Released on June 16, 1960, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho didn't just walk through the front door of popular culture. It shattered it. From the moment audiences stepped into theaters, unaware of the chilling experience awaiting them, to the final, unnerving frame, Psycho was, and still is, unlike anything they'd seen before. It challenged conventions, redefined suspense, and made people afraid to ever take a shower again. And more than 6 decades later, it still pulls viewers into its eerie, unpredictable grip. On the surface, it starts simply enough. A woman steals a large sum of money and goes on the run. That's a story we've heard before. But Psycho doesn't play by the rules. It lures you in with a classic setup, complete with illicit romance, stolen cash, and mounting guilt, and then cuts the floor out from under you in the most shocking way possible. It doesn't just subvert expectations. It annihilates them. The story opens in Phoenix, Arizona, on a hot Friday afternoon. Marion Crane, played by the luminous Janet Leigh, is introduced in a hotel room during her lunch break, entangled in a love affair with Sam Loomis. The heat outside mirrors the heat of their situation. They want to be together, but money and morality stand in the way. Marion, a seemingly ordinary secretary, makes a snap decision that sets off a chain of events neither she nor the audience can foresee. When $40,000 in cash lands in her lap, money she's been entrusted to deposit, she seizes it. A chance at freedom, a new life, a future with Sam. And so begins her descent into tension. The stolen money becomes an unbearable weight as she drives alone across desolate highways. The road stretches endlessly, each mile feeding her paranoia. In a moment of hesitation and fatigue, a rainstorm forces her off the road and into the glowing vacancy sign of the Bates Motel. And just like that, the story changes. This is where we meet Norman Bates. Anthony Perkins delivers a performance so quietly unnerving, so heartbreakingly innocent on the surface, that viewers initially lower their guard around him. He's soft-spoken, polite, almost childlike. His boyish smile and gentle demeanor feel disarming. He offers Marion food. They talk about loneliness, about being trapped by circumstance, about family. He talks of his mother, sick, isolated, unstable. The mention of her sparks tension, but the real terror lies not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. Then comes the shower. No one was ready for what followed. What begins as a moment of reprieve for Marion, cleansing, perhaps even redemption, erupts into one of the most violent, jarring, and iconic scenes in film history. The music, composed by Bernard Herrmann, pierces like a blade. The staccato strings become a shriek, a sonic representation of panic and murder. And in less than a minute, the lead character is dead. Audiences were stunned. Never before had a film killed off its apparent protagonist halfway through the story. Janet Leigh's character was our moral compass. Her journey, the stolen money, the guilt, the possibility of turning back, felt like the plot. But Psycho wasn't about Marion. It was about Norman. And the way Hitchcock executed that narrative pivot was revolutionary. From this point forward, the film becomes something else entirely. It morphs from a crime thriller into a psychological horror. With Marion gone, her sister Lila and boyfriend Sam Loomis begin searching for her. Their investigation takes them back to the Bates Motel, where Norman, ever so gracious and mild, claims to know nothing. But his actions betray his words. His twitching expressions, his hurried responses, and the way he looks toward the house on the hill, his mother's house, hint at something far more sinister. The Bates home itself is a character in its own right. Perched like a vulture above the motel, it looms large, casting shadows over everything below. Its Gothic architecture and creaking stairs evoke dread with every frame. As Lila and Sam dig deeper, suspicion grows. The tension thickens. And still, Norman smiles. What makes Psycho so magnetic is not just its plot, but the way it manipulates the audience's emotions. Hitchcock doesn't allow viewers to sit back and observe. He forces them to feel panic, confusion, fear. The camera often takes the role of a voyeur, spying on characters, lingering on their anxiety, invading their privacy. There's a sense that we're complicit in something wrong, something taboo. Anthony Perkins' performance is essential to this. Norman is not a monster in the traditional sense. He's fragile, vulnerable, haunted. The way he talks to himself, the way he interacts with his mother, the way his voice trembles when pressed, it all builds to the film's final revelation. Because Norman Bates is not just Norman Bates. He is also Mother. The woman he idolized, resented, and eventually murdered, now lives inside him, psychologically speaking. He wears her persona like a second skin, slipping in and out of it with terrifying ease. That twist, the reveal of Norman's split personality, was a narrative bombshell in 1960. It introduced mainstream audiences to the terrifying concept that the human mind itself could be the villain. That horror didn't need ghosts or ghouls. It could live in the gentle, lonely man who runs a motel. The final scenes of Psycho are chilling not because of gore, but because of quiet stillness. The image of Norman, wrapped in a blanket, Mother now fully in control, sitting silently as he narrates her thoughts in voiceover, remains one of cinema's most unforgettable endings. The line, "They'll see and they'll know, and they'll say, 'Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly,' is a masterstroke. It's not just eerie, it's deeply sad. But Psycho wasn't just a narrative triumph. It was a technical one as well. Hitchcock's choice to shoot in black and white wasn't just about budget. It gave the film a stark, documentary feel that made the violence more palatable, yet strangely more disturbing. The shower scene, for instance, could never have been achieved with such intensity in color at the time. The shadows, the silhouettes, the contrast, all amplified the horror. Then there's Bernard Herrmann's score. Though Hitchcock initially wanted the shower scene to be silent, Herrmann insisted on adding music. What he created was history. The violins don't just accompany the scene, they are the scene. They stab and slash with such ferocity that they become the sound of violence itself. It's hard to imagine Psycho without that score. It would be like imagining Jaws without the two-note terror of John Williams' theme. The public reaction to Psycho was unlike anything Hitchcock had experienced before. Lines wrapped around theaters. Viewers were forbidden from entering once the film had started. a tactic Hitchcock enforced to preserve the film's secrets. Theaters posted signs urging patrons not to spoil the ending. And it worked. The sense of mystery, the element of surprise, the thrill of the unknown. It all became part of the movie-going experience. Critics were initially split. Some found the film too grotesque, too sensational. But audiences were mesmerized. Over time, even the skeptics came around. The American Film Institute would later name Norman Bates as one of cinema's greatest villains. The Library of Congress selected Psycho for preservation in the National Film Registry. And film schools across the globe began dissecting it frame by frame. And then came the ripple effect. Psycho redefined what horror could be. It paved the way for psychological thrillers, slasher films, and character-driven horror. Without Psycho, there would be no Halloween, no Silence of the Lambs, no Get Out. Hitchcock proved that fear could be intimate, that the mind, when pushed far enough, could become a house of horrors. Janet Leigh's performance, though cut tragically short, is still praised for its nuance and emotional range. Her vulnerability and internal conflict made Marion more than a plot device. She was human, flawed, relatable, and her abrupt death left a scar on the audience, forcing them to grieve a character they thought they'd follow to the end. And then there's the cultural aftermath. Psycho seeped into every corner of popular consciousness. The shower scene has been parodied, referenced, and studied endlessly. Norman Bates became an archetype, the mild-mannered killer with a twisted psyche. And Hitchcock, already a master of suspense, cemented his legacy as a filmmaker unafraid to take risks. But what really makes Psycho endure? Why do new generations keep discovering it? Why does it still thrill, disturb, and surprise? Because it touches something primal. The fear of losing control. The fear of being watched. The fear that evil doesn't always wear a monster's face. Sometimes it wears a shy smile. It offers you a room for the night. It apologizes for the mess. And so viewers keep coming back. To that motel off the highway, to that house on the hill, to that dimly lit parlor filled with birds of prey. They come back for the suspense, for the performances, for the brilliance of its construction. They come back to watch the rules of storytelling break and reform into something daring, something timeless. Psycho isn't just a movie. It's a mirror held up to the darker parts of the human soul. It's a test of what we expect from cinema, and what we're willing to see when those expectations are turned upside down. So if you've never seen it or haven't revisited it in a while, Psycho is worth every frame. For the shock, for the score, for the way it toys with your mind long after the credits roll. But most of all, for the thrill of knowing that even in a quiet motel on a rainy night, with a polite host and a clean shower, nothing is ever as it seems. In the opening moments of Psycho, we find ourselves pulled into a world that feels familiar but quietly unsettled. The camera glides over the sprawling cityscape of Phoenix, Arizona, before narrowing in on a single hotel room. Inside, Marion Crane and Sam Loomis share an intimate moment in the aftermath of a secret rendezvous. The air is thick with longing and frustration. They're in love, but their relationship is suffocating under the weight of real-world problems. Money, divorce, judgment. Sam's financial troubles are keeping them apart, and Marion, tired of stolen afternoons and half-promises, wants more. She wants legitimacy, escape, freedom. The conversation hints at desperation, and in Marion's eyes, a spark of defiance is already beginning to flicker. Back at her office, Marion returns to her everyday life. Paperwork, routine, and the subtle patronization of a wealthy client waving cash in her face. Her boss entrusts her with an unusually large deposit. $40,000 in cash, meant to be delivered to the bank. The client is crude and dismissive, flaunting his wealth as if it grants him power over everyone in the room. Something shifts in Marion at that moment. It's not overt, not theatrical. But beneath her composed demeanor, an idea takes root. And then she runs. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't write a note. She simply packs her bags, changes clothes, and drives away with the money hidden in her purse. The sound of tires rolling across the pavement becomes a heartbeat, pulsing with tension. The city shrinks in her rearview mirror as the desert opens up before her. She's not just fleeing with stolen money. She's fleeing everything. Expectations, limitations, disappointment. As day slips into night, Marion's paranoia begins to grow. A cop wakes her from a roadside nap, his mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes, his demeanor calm but invasive. She's not under arrest, but she's not free either. The pressure mounts. Every question he asks is another reminder that her secret might already be unraveling. The camera lingers on her expressions. Guilt, fear, calculation. The officer lets her go, but the suspicion lingers like the dust trailing behind her car. In a used car lot, she tries to erase her tracks, trading her vehicle in for another. The salesman is pushy but polite, noting her nervousness with offhand remarks. Her discomfort isn't just fear of being caught. It's the weight of a moral boundary crossed. As she drives away in her new car, rain begins to fall. The highway becomes a slick ribbon of darkness. Her vision narrows. Her thoughts race. And up ahead, out of the storm, a glowing neon sign appears. Bates Motel. It's nearly deserted. 12 cabins in a row, all empty. The office is quiet, the registry dusty. And then Norman Bates appears. He steps into the light like a gentle breeze. Polite, smiling, a bit awkward. He's not what she or we expect. He's young, good-looking in a quiet sort of way, with a shy charm that borders on innocence. He invites her to check in, mentions the rain, suggests dinner. There's no threat. In fact, he's disarmingly kind. But there's something off. When he offers her food from the house behind the motel, she hesitates. He insists it's no trouble. He lives with his mother, he says. She does the cooking. But as Marion unpacks in her room, she hears shouting, voices raised. A woman's harsh tone berating Norman for bringing a strange girl into the house. The mother's voice is sharp, angry, accusing. Norman returns moments later, trying to smile through his humiliation, pretending nothing is wrong. They eat together in the parlor behind the office. The room is filled with taxidermied birds. Owls, crows, predatory and frozen mid-motion. It's an odd detail, one that sets the tone for what's to come. Marion is curious about his life, and Norman, though guarded, opens up. He speaks of his mother, how she's ill, how she's all he has, how a boy's best friend is his mother. The words are simple, but the subtext is chilling. He laughs off the idea of putting her in an institution, but there's bitterness behind his smile. "You mean an asylum?" he asks, and there's a flicker in his eyes. Their conversation deepens. Marion, still rattled by her actions, begins to reflect. She talks about making mistakes, about going back to fix things. It's clear she's considering returning the money, righting her wrong. In Norman, she sees a reflection of her own entrapment. Both of them, in their own ways, are stuck. Marion in a life of quiet desperation, Norman in a house he can't leave and a past he can't escape. She returns to her room, more resolved. She tears up the note she was writing, planning her next move. She gets into the shower, washing away the stress, the guilt, the grime of the day. The water runs. The steam builds. And then, without warning, the curtain is pulled back. A figure, silhouetted by the light, slashes into the frame. A blade gleams. The music explodes. Screeching violins, stabbing and shrieking in rhythm with the attack. Marion screams, her hands flailing, but it's futile. The scene is over in seconds. Her life, cut short in a moment of pure, brutal terror. Blood swirls down the drain, water still running. It's one of the most shocking turns in film history. The supposed protagonist is dead, and the audience is left in stunned silence. What just happened? Who killed her? Was it the mother we heard shouting earlier? Norman? Someone else? Norman's reaction is immediate and telling. He runs to the house, screams for his mother, and when there's no answer, he dashes back to the scene. What we see next is almost clinical. He cleans up the blood, wipes down the room, wraps Marion's body in a shower curtain, places it in the trunk of her car, and sinks the vehicle into the swamp behind the motel. The camera lingers on the water's surface as bubbles rise and the car disappears. A secret buried. And now the story shifts. We're no longer following Marion, we're watching Norman. And though his demeanor remains soft, there's a cold efficiency in his actions. The murder is shocking, but the cleanup is unsettling in a different way. He doesn't panic. He doesn't hesitate. He just gets it done. Back in Phoenix, Marion's disappearance has raised questions. Her sister, Leigh Crane, and Sam Loomis become central to the unfolding investigation. They're worried. She's vanished without a trace. No calls, no letters, no sign. And then there's the money. A private investigator named Arbogast is hired to track her down. He's methodical, skeptical, and persistent. Arbogast's path leads him to the Bates Motel. He meets Norman. Charming, polite, helpful. But as Arbogast probes deeper, Norman's stories start to crumble. He claims no one has been there in days. Yet the guestbook has Marion's alias. And the more Arbogast pushes, the more Norman fumbles. His nervousness becomes difficult to hide. His boyish charm begins to slip. And then there's the house. Arbogast asks about Norman's mother. He wants to speak to her. Norman resists. He insists she's sick, bedridden, can't be disturbed. But Arbogast has dealt with liars before. He senses something is wrong. And so, after Norman refuses access, Arbogast returns later, alone, climbing the steps toward the house, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive Mrs. Bates. What happens next is terrifying, but not unexpected. We've been here before. We know what's hiding in that house. Or at least we think we do. The tension mounts as Arbogast climbs the stairs. The camera moves with him slowly, deliberately. He reaches the landing. The door creaks open. And then, another slash, another scream, another life taken. It's here in the first half of Psycho that the real horror sets in. This isn't just a story about theft or guilt. It's a story about secrets, about the masks people wear and the truths they bury. Norman is no longer just a shy motel clerk. He's something else, something far more dangerous. And the house on the hill? It's not just a setting. It's a tomb, a prison, a twisted shrine. As the first half concludes, we're left not only with a string of unanswered questions but with a growing sense of dread. Who is Norman, really? What is the truth about his mother? And how far will he go to keep the world from finding out? Every moment so far has been carefully crafted to build this unease. From the framing of Norman in shadow, to the eerie silence of the motel grounds, to the stuffed birds glaring down from their perches. Everything whispers that something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. And yet, we can't look away, because Psycho doesn't just scare us. It pulls us in. It asks us to empathize with a thief, then mourn her. It invites us to trust a killer, then fear him. And it sets the stage for one of the most unforgettable second halves in cinematic history. As the shadow of the Bates house stretches longer over the quiet motel grounds, the story refuses to loosen its grip. Marion is gone, and now Arbogast has vanished too. The motel sits in silence, a deceptive calm draped over a storm of secrets. And though Norman still smiles, still tends to the registry and offers nervous charm, there's something new behind his eyes. Tightened nerves, watchful calculation, and the unmistakable weight of someone who knows he's being watched. Back in Fairvale, Leigh Crane is growing restless. Her sister hasn't written. Her disappearance has gone from concerning to chilling. Together with Sam Loomis, Leigh decides to trace Marion's last known steps. They speak with Arbogast's agency, and soon, they too are drawn toward the lonely stretch of highway where the Bates Motel sits. Isolated, unremarkable, and hiding something unspeakable behind its peeling doors. But the way forward isn't direct. First, we see the subtle cracks in Norman's psyche beginning to widen. He speaks to his mother again, her voice rising from upstairs in the house. We don't see her, but we hear her, the same commanding, accusatory voice we remember from earlier. She warns him, she belittles him, and Norman, pacing like a child caught between obedience and panic, insists he can handle everything. It's a conversation that sounds like a tug-of-war with the mind itself. Lila and Sam arrive at the motel, posing as travelers. Norman, ever the anxious host, checks them in but fumbles through basic pleasantries. Lila quickly senses something is off. She scans the guest book, hoping for a sign that Marion passed through, and finds it. The name she used, Marie Samuels, is there. Norman stutters. His story stumbles over itself. There's no subtlety now, his mask is slipping, thread by thread. Lila wants answers. Sam suggests confronting Norman directly, but she has a different plan. While Sam distracts Norman in the office, Lila will sneak into the house. It's a risky move, but time is running out. If they wait, they fear Marion's fate may never be known. Inside the house, the atmosphere thickens. Shadows cling to every corner. The decor is dated, preserved in amber like the stuffed birds in Norman's parlor. Lila climbs the stairs cautiously, moving through a home that feels more like a tomb. Each room tells a story. A mother's bedroom untouched, clothes still neatly arranged. A child's room frozen in time, filled with toys and a sense of innocence long since lost. But there's no sign of life, only the echo of lives that once were. Meanwhile, Sam pushes Norman harder. He challenges him, accuses him, tries to buy time. But Norman snaps. The facade collapses completely. In a sudden outburst, he strikes Sam and bolts for the house, panic surging through his veins. He knows someone's inside. He knows they're close. Lila, still upstairs, hears movement. She hides as Norman rushes in. When the coast is clear, she creeps down into the basement, drawn by something. An instinct, a dread. The stairs creak under her feet. The air grows colder. And then, in a corner of the cellar, she sees an old woman, seated, facing the wall. She approaches, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Bates?" she asks. No response. She reaches out and touches the woman's shoulder. The body turns. What follows is one of the most horrifying and iconic reveals in film history. The corpse of Mrs. Bates spins around, revealing a grinning, skeletal face, eyes hollow and mouth stretched in a grotesque smile. Lila screams, her voice piercing the silence, and in that instant Norman appears. Wearing a dress, a wig, and clutching a kitchen knife, his face twisted in a trance of madness. He is no longer Norman. He is Mother. Sam arrives just in time, wrestling the knife away, subduing Norman before another life can be taken. And just like that, the nightmare uncoils. The tension that's been building, subtly, expertly, through every frame finally erupts in full. But Alfred Hitchcock doesn't leave us with the horror alone. In the police station, the film takes an unexpected turn. A psychiatrist explains what the audience has just witnessed, not to diminish the fear, but to contextualize it. Norman, we learn, suffered from dissociative identity disorder. After murdering his mother years earlier in a fit of jealous rage, he was unable to cope with the guilt. To preserve her, he exhumed her body, preserved it, and began to live as both himself and mother. The dominant personality would shift based on stress or threat. When Norman was attracted to Marion, the mother persona saw it as a betrayal and took control. That same pattern played out again with Arbogast and nearly with Lila. It's here that Psycho departs from mere thriller and ventures into tragedy. Norman isn't just a monster. He's a man broken by love, guilt, and repression. The horror doesn't come only from his crimes, but from the recognition that something human remains beneath the surface. Something fragile, something lost. The film closes with Norman sitting in a cell, no longer speaking as himself. His mind has fully surrendered to Mother. His expression is eerie, but the voice we hear is hers. Calm, confident, chilling. She says she wouldn't even harm a fly, as the camera lingers on Norman's face, which slowly contorts into a ghostly smile. In that final moment, the image of a skull overlays his face. Subtle, fleeting, but unmistakable, signaling that Norman Bates, as we knew him, is gone. And yet the swamp still holds secrets. The last shot reveals Marion's car being pulled from the muddy depths. The only tangible evidence of a story, so twisted it defied all expectations. What makes this second half so unforgettable isn't just the shocking revelations. It's the way every earlier moment falls into place. The birds in the parlor, Norman's nervous stammer, the unseen mother shouting from above. They all become puzzle pieces fitting into a much darker picture. It's not just about what happens, but how it happens, the build-up, the misdirection, the psychological layering. Hitchcock doesn't just want to scare you. He wants to pull you into the unraveling of a mind. The impact lingers long after the credits roll. Marion's stolen money, which once felt like the center of the plot, becomes almost irrelevant. It was never about the cash. It was about the detour, the unexpected turn off the highway that led her to something far more dangerous. It's a reminder that sometimes the real danger lies not in what we do wrong, but in where we end up and who's waiting there. The emotional highs of the second half come not from spectacle, but from realization. From the moment Leigh enters the house, to the climactic descent into the basement, every scene is wrapped in a quiet, relentless dread. And through it all, Norman remains one of cinema's most haunting figures, because he's not evil in the traditional sense. He's someone who tried to preserve love through destruction, who broke under the pressure of his own emotions, and who lives in the wreckage of that collapse. By the end, everything has come full circle. The characters who began with clear goals, love, redemption, justice, are transformed by what they've endured. Sam and Leigh sought answers and found horror. Marion sought escape and found death. Norman sought protection and lost himself entirely. And the audience? Were left shaken. Not just because of what we saw, but because of how it was shown. Psycho redefined what a film could do. Kill its lead halfway through, challenge morality, play with identity, and create a villain who was both terrifying and sympathetic. The second half isn't just the resolution of a mystery. It's the culmination of a masterclass in psychological tension. When we reflect on the journey, beginning with a theft and ending with a fractured mind, it's clear that every thread was deliberate. Every quiet scene, every line of dialogue, every shot of that lonely house on the hill, it all mattered. Nothing was wasted. And that's what makes Psycho such a triumph. It lures us in with what seems like a crime drama, then plunges us into the dark corners of the human psyche. Even after the final frame fades, that house still looms. That motel sign still flickers in the rain. And Norman, smiling in the darkness, hearing his mother's voice, still sits quietly, waiting for someone to come check in. Character exploration, 2,500 words. A deep dive into the main characters, their motivations, arcs, and growth throughout the movie. Discuss how the actors bring their roles to life, making them unforgettable. A mention secondary characters and their contributions to the story. The character details should blend naturally into the discussion, avoiding any rigid sections.